Yeah, and so it was about, it was 5, 6, 7 years after that that we connected. But I guess the first question I have for you is that most people stumble onto gold late. Now, I didn't, and you didn't. You saw it as a teenager. What did you understand about money back then, Peter, that people still don't understand today? Because I like to break it down to the very core essence of what gold and silver are to people. To me, it's wealth. What is it to you? Yeah, right on. Well said. Couldn't agree more. To me, the intriguing part is I look back at my career, and as a 19-year-old kid started in this industry, no one understood anything that my friends that I was doing, nor did they want to. And I always have admired people who start in this field young and start to understand at an early age what money is, what currency is, what economics are, and how they relate to our future and to our current existence. So that brings me back to what you were just talking about, and the fundamentals right now are definitely tightening. And we've talked about for a long time now the record central bank buying, the years of strong performance in both gold and silver. I mean, really strong performance, right? It's the tortoise, not the hare. Gold has doubled the 10-year treasury. It's beaten the S&P 500 for 25 years cumulatively. If you were one of the people who reinvested your dividends, you almost caught gold. Most people don't do that. And now we see gold and silver really starting to take off. So with all of that said, Pete, why do you think investors still dismiss precious metals? Why do you think so many people, that maybe you call buddies, that I call friends, people that that are well informed, maybe just reading the wrong stuff, not the wonderful stuff that I read every day on goldseek.com. And by the way, everyone out there, if you're looking for a great place to get information and to check out the spot price, Gold Seek, Silver Seek, they're the top of the food chain as far as I'm concerned. But why do you think so many people continue to miss what's really happening? Yeah, I hope people are listening to you, Peter. This is why I always found you to be someone very authentic and someone even though I was a little bit older and you could completely and totally relate to as a friend. You got it at a level and at an age when most people wouldn't even begin to think of it. Most people getting those credit cards in college and going out and buying a 12-pack of beer or something else, and you're buying gold and silver. You go to school, and although you enjoy learning from a professor who focuses obviously on John Maynard Keynes and his theories of economics, doesn't quite resonate with you because you're learning from your parents real life. And I guess you could say that's a little bit more like the Austrian style of things, where it's about savings, investment, and reinvestment, where my grandfather said to me, no, I don't ever buy anything unless I have enough to buy it. I don't use credit. He was a product of the Great Depression, and your parents were a product of living in a communist country and understanding that there are no free lunches. And you're right, we aren't educated, right? We are a country that learns about things, but perhaps maybe not learning about things on a broader perspective, focusing on Keynesian economics, not learning about Austrian economics, which to me is the foundation of a solid society: savings, investment, and reinvestment. And really that's kind of what you were even doing with taking out some credit. You were investing in it. And these are the things that I think younger people should really learn. In fact, many of the things that we are taught in school is so far such a deviation from what they should learn in real life to help them. Something as simple as the law of 70 seconds or things like that when we talk about debt and debt accumulation and that kind of stuff. I appreciate your perspective. It's spot on. So I want to move on here. And I saw something you wrote on X, and it resonated with me once again. And you said, this time it feels different. Now, I think you were referring to silver equities, I believe, in the tweet. But for me, it resonates on a broader level, right? And I say it to you for things such as, we recently saw gold get smashed down by $100 an ounce. And then somehow, some way, bang, it recovers almost immediately. Now, you would agree with me, I believe, without putting words in your mouth. I've known you long enough, and you followed this as close as anyone, that these kinds of smashes used to matter. They used to break the neck of the rally. Paper sell-offs used to define this market, right? Where it would get to a point like in 2011, and then they they literally cut its Achilles and it falls down and crumples to the ground and doesn't come back for years. Now they're being shrugged off. So to me, when you say this time feels different, it's much broader than just equities and their performance. Are we watching the moment, Pete, where you think maybe price control starts to fail? Yeah, you mentioned it's repricing, and I would argue, I think that's very well said. To me, it's never been allowed to find its real price discovery. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss. You know, even the so-called analysts who haven't been in this game as long as you and I have. You know, you say things like, well, the buyer just thinks it's going to correct and it's going to correct. You know, it's going to wait for a pullback. I mean, that sounds like stuff I've heard all the way up. I can tell you've been doing this for a long time just by saying that when you try and talk to people, well, it can't stay. Look, when you're talking about something that has been suppressed for a very long time, and we don't need to get into the debate, I'm not talking you, I'm talking about anyone, about the fact that gold and silver have been suppressed for various reasons for a very long time. I talk about it on every show. The fact that it hasn't been allowed to find real price discovery, I think you can put a kind of an asterisk by technical analysis or even past belief structures about the way this market goes, because it does seem like things are changing. It does seem like delivery at the highest level is beginning, as Jim Sinclair always used to say, overwhelm the paper suppression. So just a couple more questions, Pete, and I really appreciate your time, brother. So let's talk about the central banks for a minute. The central banks have been accumulating gold for years. And when I say gold, to a smaller degree, I mean silver too. We're beginning to see that. But for the moment, gold. Do you think that these central banks are quietly preparing, especially those of the global south, for some sort of a monetary transition? Or is this just simply hedging against the West, the President Trump, the fall of the dollar? Is it something bigger, or is it just hedging? Right on. 1.5 more questions. Pete, your answers are great and kind of answered a few questions I was going to ask you, so we'll just skip right ahead to one last question on silver. And again, inspired by another tweet I saw, you talking about TD Bank and you know, how silly it is that they know better, in my mind, and you alluded to this in your tweet. Not only have they written about the positive things about silver and where it could ultimately go, they talk about it all the time, yet they're foolish enough to put a huge short position out there, tell the world, yeah, we're shorting silver, we think it's going down to 40-something, and we see $2. So with silver in backwardation, delivery delays growing across all of the exchanges, lease rates exploding where the cost to borrow or lease silver, the U.S. calling it a critical mineral, TD Securities itself warning of a tidal wave of risks, as they say, while they were just recently stopped out of their big short at $92. Idiots. Why are institutions still shorting silver, Pete? Is this reckless denial, or is this a sign that the paper market is just losing control? And I guess for all those people out there that want to know, where is silver going? Where does it go when the control finally breaks? Kind of feels like it is breaking. Where do you think silver goes? Then I'm going to ask you one last question on what someone would do, some young person would do who wants to position themselves before the dam breaks. But in this respect, where does silver go when this dam, the price control mechanism, finally does break on silver?